Hello, everyone. I hope that wherever you are, you're safe and well. My name is Marilyn Zakhour. I'm the CEO and founder of Cosmic Centaurs, and we're a leadership and organizational development firm. Today, you're joining us for a session of our 7th annual Cosmic Conference, a 3-week virtual conference taking place between March 25th and April 17th. While we typically hold the conference in October, the situation and the events across the region made us believe that this conversation couldn't wait. To support leaders when they need it most, we chose to bring this year's edition forward and convene the conversation now. Our conference is titled Grounded and Limitless, Leading Organizations that Survive and Thrive. And through the conference, we're hoping to support leaders as they manage prolonged uncertainty. And to explore this, we're bringing together more than 15 leaders, experts, academics, to make sense of what leadership requires in moments like these across 3 themes. Today is actually the last session of week 1, which was all about enduring. How do we survive periods of uncertainty? Week 2, which starts on Monday, is called Adapt. It's about evolving in response to change. And week 3, Thrive, is about turning lessons learned in crisis into a competitive advantage and hopefully emerging stronger, more innovative, and better prepared for the future. Our speaker, Ghida, who I'll introduce in just a minute, and myself, would love for you to actively participate in the session, share your reflections, your stories, your reactions, your experiences, and of course, your questions. If you know someone who might find value in today's conversation, you can tag them. It's not too late for them to join us at the end of their week. And if you find value in this session and the conference as a whole, and you want to give us something in return, we'd love for you to take our survey. We're conducting research to capture how leaders in this region are navigating uncertainty so that others around the world can learn from us. Our team will drop a link in the chat to our Leading in the Arab World survey. If you have 5 minutes to spare, it would mean the world to us. And now to today's session. Self and system, when the ground moves, leading across different realities in the GCC. I'm extremely pleased to introduce and to welcome Ghida Barakat. Thank you so much for joining us, Ghida.
Thank you. Thank you for having me and for us to have this very important conversation.
Absolutely. Let me start by introducing you, and then I'll introduce our topic for today. Ghida is the founder and MD of Leap Leadership and a senior leadership consultant, executive, and team coach. She is commercially astute and strategically minded, certified executive and systemic coach, consultant, facilitator, and assessor with over 20 years of experience working with multinational organizations. She coaches and mentors executives and teams to think beyond personal agendas, fostering a powerful and collective identity. Ghida has delivered more than 2,900 hours of individual and team system coaching and is an international faculty member and front-of-room leader at CRR Global, where she trains coaches, psychologists, corporate executives, and leaders worldwide on ORSC, the Organizational and Relationship Systems Coaching Methodologies. She also serves as a faculty member with the Leadership Circle and previously held the role of regional director for the Middle East and North Africa. Early in her career, Ghida held senior executive roles at NBK and Al-Shaya Group. Her experience with executives and intercultural teams across the Middle East, Europe, and Asia enables her to deeply understand leadership and organizational challenges, particularly in complex and uncertain environments. She's worked with many different organizations, including organizations like Maersk, SAP, EY, Google, just to name a few, along with many in the region, from Saudi Tadawul, the Basma Group, Al-Shaya, and more, supporting their leaders in navigating change, strengthening collaboration, and driving growth. Before we begin, Ghida, I just want to take a moment to check in. How have you been? How has this week been for you? How are you feeling at the moment?
Oh, wow. This question can take the whole hour, but we'll keep it short. Thanks for asking. And look, it definitely hasn't been easy, right? It's been ups and downs. We're dealing with a lot of uncertainty, a massive amount of complexity. There's cognitive overload, right? Consuming a lot of information and news. There's a sense of heaviness as well in our system, in our collective system. So holding a lot of things at once. especially I was just telling you earlier, being Lebanese and seeing what's happening in the region. Here, of course, living that, and then also seeing what's happening in Lebanon, the horrid realities, homeschooling, worrying about the future, loved ones, and the world, and with all of that, attending still to clients has been a challenge. But at the same time, I think being able to sort of take it day by day, doing some practices that help regulate the nervous system, has come in really handy. And of course, happy that we're here in the UAE, where we are safe and sound.
Yeah, absolutely. We will talk, in fact, about the multiple layers of what we're having to deal with. But I really love your summary, because every one of us tuning in has that list, right? The list of the things making them, lose their minds, and the things keeping them sane. And in some ways, it's like a mahbat, like you go through them every day. But there's definitely a lot of it on everybody's plates. I thank you for voicing it on behalf of myself and anyone listening to us today. As you so well put it, right? Leaders in the GCC, in the Arab world, in Lebanon, where we're from, they're operating in a moment that has this layered complexity, and multiple things are unfolding at once. Geopolitical tension, economic transformation, all while still having to hold national visions and deliver extremely rapid AI disruption. And of course, we don't all experience them in the same way, but we're all experiencing these many different layers. And that's why we all react in different ways. You and I had a bit of a kind of a connect before this started. And if we had a third person and a fourth one, we would notice that we're not responding in the same way, because we all, sit and come from very different realities, whether it's emotional, cultural, even physical. And so in this context, of course, none of us have the right answers, but we still need to hold the system together, to hold diverging perspectives, responses, emotional states, interpretations of what is happening. And that's what we're going to explore today. Of course, leaders in the region are navigating all of these layers all at once. Talk to us about what makes this moment uniquely complex and how it's showing up day to day in our realities, and what you're hearing from across the many leaders that you support.
So, you definitely named that sense of complexity. Navigating all those complexities, whether it's AI disruption, the vision, the transformation. If we could just take those, we realize that those require us, of course, to learn new things, unlearn things that we've already, have, adapt to things, be more future focused. And, we have to think about how to invest. We have to invest probably at a pace that we never had to before, restructuring organizations, designing it in a way that fits the future. But this is a future that we still don't even know how it's going to look like, right? So we're dealing with complex, not complicated, but complex things that we don't even have an answer to, holding all those, bunch of complex issues. And in the midst of all of that, at least like we had some extent a way forward. But in the midst of all of that, bam, war hits. And we all get pulled in survival. We feel that sense of off balance. We question what is truly important. What do we need to focus on? This added a completely different layer. Layer that I think nobody imagined, they will have to navigate. And so while war pushes us towards safety, cutting costs, national vision pushes us towards making investments, assets to invest, to take risks, to trust the future. AI disruption requires us to rethink how we're going to work. Again, learning new things, unlearning things. So leaders are pulled in very different directions, in directions that are not aligned. all right, while still having to lead a team. So leaders today, I think, are not just making decisions, they are holding contradictions. Do I prioritize, I don't know, safety or ambition? Stability or growth? Do I cut costs or do I invest more? So yeah, in addition to, of course, those leaders being human, and they have their own values, their own priorities, their own worries, their own fears. So it's definitely a hard reality at this point, but we need to navigate it because complexity of the world is only increasing. It might look different, but it's still going to continuously increase.
Yeah, absolutely. And not only do we have to deal with those complexities within ourselves and within our organizations, but very, on a day-to-day basis, especially when you work in a place like this one where 90% of the population are foreigners. I'm sure 99% of the organizations are multicultural, with people coming from all over the world. Some of the tension you have to hold is within yourself, but some of it is also within the very different lived experiences of the individuals on the team. How do these differences show up, and how can you lead when your team is not really standing in the same land? We might, on paper be experiencing the same events, but we may not be living them in the same way.
Okay. So if we take the first one around, like, how are they showing up day to day? I think it really varies, and you said it, it varies from leader to leader. And I want to point at something that's really important here as well, which is what structure of mind is this leader operating from? We have two structures of mind. This is what Bob Anderson defined as the two structures of mind, the reactive and creative mind. And especially in times of uncertainty, now 70 to 80% of the people are in a reactive, okay, not in a creative. So this is a majority of people. And especially in uncertainty and complex times, we tend to shift into those reactive patterns. Because here the driver is fear, right? And the need for safety and for security. And that's what gets triggered during times of complexity. So behaviorally, we go into controlling because we want to create certainty. We go into micromanaging, pushing hard on performance. I don't know, listing the 10 what-if plans. Or we might go the other way, where we're avoiding decisions or waiting to be told what to do, feeling that sense of disengagement. So these are the leaders that are operating from that place of reactive mindset. But yet we've also got other leaders that are also operating from more of a creative structure of mind. And they're more grounded. They're able to hold more complex or multiple, let's say, perspectives. They're able to stay connected, speak truth, respond intentionally and purposefully. And the driver here is purpose versus fear. And the thing is this, it's not that we either operate here or here, all right? But really it is, where is my center of gravity, all right? Am I more operating from a creative mindset, or am I more operating from a reactive mindset? I'll give you an example, like organizations right now, some organizations are putting this whole leadership, for example, development on hold because they want to focus on stability or operations, delivering targets. And that's fine as long as they're making that choice consciously and it's not driven by actual fear. Whereas others are saying, well, you know what? We acknowledge the war, but we know that the war is not here to stay. And we're going to use this time to design, to plan, to prepare, so that when things are stabilized, we can move quickly. Same context, different voices, different choices. There's no right or wrong, but they're just making sense of the world differently. And when you talk about being in different worldviews, or you said lands, I would call it also worldviews. And when we think of leading teams that are not standing in that land, or are operating from different worldviews, who that was Jason George's. He talked about that, and he said that people don't just experience reality differently, they make meaning differently. And he named 3 different worldviews that we operate from. And 3 of those are here within the region, because people here come from all walks of life. And he talks about the innocence and guilt worldview, which focuses on a right and wrong. He talks about the honor and shame worldview that focuses on dignity, respect, and belonging. And he talks about the power and fear worldview or lens that focuses on safety and navigating uncertainty. Again, all 3 exist within us and within different regions, but one usually becomes more dominant in shaping how people interpret what is happening. So you'll find, and what we're seeing right now, is you'll find teams who are facing the exact same situation, but they have conflicting worldviews about it. The meaning that they're making is very different. And again, going back with GCC, having people from all over, all those worldviews are interacting at the same time within the same system. Now, the issue, Marilyn, is that if that is not addressed, misalignment of meaning starts to happen. And so leaders need to start to work with it. I just want to give you a small example that actually really happened recently with everything that's going on as well. I was with a senior leadership team, and few members that were there held the innocence and guilt lens. Okay, so direct, focused on clarity, on accountability, say it as it is, and the rest were operating from a different lens, which is more of the honor and shame lens, which is dignity, respect, thinking about how things are said, that matters, relationship. And so one leader decided in the midst of all of this to give real direct feedback to someone. Now to him, it was like, yep, it's clear, it's constructive, it's efficient, but you could sense the energy shifted completely in the room. All right, there was this awkward silence, and you can see the body language changing. Now, I saw that, named it, started to unpack it, and unpack what was really behind it all. It wasn't the content of the feedback, not at all. It was just how it landed. For some, that moment felt exposing, diminishing to their dignity. So the intention was good, but the impact was very different. So it's not about choosing one style over another, but a leader has to understand how to hold space for those multiple lenses. Because if we don't give that voice, then all of that is happening underneath the surface. And that can be very detrimental to the relationship within the team.
Yeah, absolutely. And Ghida, this particular team was lucky enough to have you to help surface those differences. But if you're a leader and a team that doesn't have that support from a facilitator and a coach, what are some ways in which leaders can help their teams to surface these differences simply, and maybe in their daily practices or in a team meeting, just to help people voice that they're having very different lived experiences? For example, something that I saw a lot from the people around me, again, especially those who work in firms that are multicultural. We're not saying this as a badge of honor, but like the Arabs have been through this enough times that we're like a little less phased than others, right? Like, and so I've seen reactions from people I know where their team members maybe come from countries where this is unthinkable, right, to them. And so some of them might have decided that it was better for them and their families to leave, and the Arabs are left behind, or maybe we don't the Arabs see someone overreacting and there's a bit of like shrugging, like, oh my God, like, let's all move on. So, we all have these anecdotes around us. As a team leader or a leader, how can you help your teams to surface these things productively so that they can understand each other's worldviews a little bit more? How can you do that practically?
To do this practically, let's just say, whether in a meeting or not, I think that it's really important, first of all, for a leader to start to notice patterns. All right? Patterns emerge. And we have to be really aware of that. And what do I mean with that? Okay, so what I mean with patterns is, how are decisions actually being made in this meeting? Who speaks and who stays silent? How is feedback being given and being received? Are people challenging what is being said? Are people easily sharing their ideas openly, directly, all of that? So the issue is not in the difference. The issue is in, how do we hold those differences? So if it's not acknowledged and not designed around, then they will show up and they will shift the energy in the room. You can easily sense it. I don't know if you've ever walked into a room, Marianne, and you felt that, ooh, something is up in the energy here. Something feels heavy or something feels light. Or so you'll sense it in the energy of that room. And what will also happen is that, because it's a signal that something underneath the surface is actually not being addressed. And of course, other things start to show up, which is toxic behaviors, misalignment, fear, etc. Now, when the difference is made, when those differences are made and they're brought up to the surface, they don't disappear, all right? Okay. But at least now we're not misinterpreting them anymore. Now we understand them, rather than people labeling one another. So I think that it's very important for leaders to start to surface that, to start to come and name it. First, also to even come and ask themselves, have I created enough safety in the system for people to share and speak up about those differences? Have I made it clear that differences are welcome? So this is a very important thing that, as a leader, after I've observed, after I've seen, but also to ask myself and say, all right, how am I playing a role maybe in not allowing those differences to be surfaced? What do I need to do differently? And it's very important also for a leader to become aware of their own worldview, right? Because at times what happens is they might be imposing their own worldview without realizing it onto others. And so it's also important to come and ask, how do I define respect? How do I receive feedback or deliver feedback? How do I handle conflict? Doing that. And from there, creating that curiosity around team members. So, having that conversation openly around our differences. What happens when those differences show up? Designing around them. So now, like, we're talking about the I, and then we're talking about seeing the different individuals and their differences. But now we're also talking about something that is bigger, which is the system. And what that means is, you're that way, I am that way. I understand that's how you deal with feedback. That's how I deal with feedback. But how do we want to be around those differences as a system? So when those differences show up, how do we want to be around them? And it's very important that we start to design, and we call that design alliance. We start to design around that. And that creates a sense of system identity, that third entity identity. All right. So we're shifting from individual focus to now system focus. And of course, that's not just a one-off conversation, right? It's dialogues, it's clear agreements, it's certain assessments that they can also do just to reveal those type of differences. So yeah, continuously observe, name, normalize.
Beautiful. Yeah, absolutely. And you gave us some examples, for example, about feedback or about certain aspects of how we work together. There are two questions of the audience that I'd like to bring in now, because maybe you can help us again practically. So one question is, how do we, why is it particularly difficult to speak about uncertainty or express emotions? And in the context of a system that is multicultural, Ghida, how would you approach that? How would you bring a team together and help us to speak about this. You know, I was joking with you earlier that my response to uncertainty is carpe diem. And that might be triggering to other people because it might sound insensitive or privileged or, you know, but it's just how I respond to things. Or it might be that as a leader, there are days where, you know, I feel strong and powerful and capable of carrying the emotional burden, and days where I'm not. So in a multicultural context, how do we normalize vulnerability and speaking about our emotions?
Well, we normalize it through leadership. So when the leader brings up his or her own differences and things that, you know, things positives and negatives, and shares all of those things, and you normalize that differences are okay and are accepted. When we are not judging the person and maybe talking more about the behavior, so addressing the behavior rather than a person, where they're also normalizing it. I think also when we realize that the differences is not a right or wrong, it's just a different way of doing things. And at times, what actually makes a team richer is when we have all those differences in a team, because then we complete one another, right? So, and there's a lot of ways that we use, like tools that we use that even teams can use on their own. Like, we don't have to facilitate that for them, but there are things that they can use on their own when it comes to understanding those differences, you know, physically stepping into different perspectives, really speaking from that voice, you know, stepping into somebody else's perspective rather than yours, and really giving that a voice, speaking from that voice, not my voice, but that different perspective's voice, and sensing and seeing what's that like, what are the gifts here, what are the costs as well, but also what are the gifts, what are the things that I want to appreciate. And so that helps people start to understand one another more and more and more, and realize that it's not that I want to be difficult. It's not that I don't want, I'm not sensitive to your feelings, but it's just that that's how I am seeing the world. That's how I've learned to see the world. So I think it's just continuous dialogue, continuous communication. The more you do it, the more you normalize it, and also not reacting to it. So it's also very important that when those differences are shared, I don't react to them, but I accept them and I appreciate them. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. And the other question from the audience that I also thought was interesting, again, to cover from the perspective of the system, is how do you create stability as a leader for yourself and for your teams in times of uncertainty? That's coming from Sabah.
Okay, so how to create
a sense of stability.
Okay, sense of stability, yes, in times of uncertainty. So if I want to create stability in times of uncertainty, again, it's self-awareness is key. And I know that this is a word that is commonly mentioned and used, but I don't know how much it is actually practiced. So I think awareness creates choice. So for me, as a leader, I need to first be aware again of my own reactive patterns. So notice that. And then from that space as well, what is the internal narrative that might be driving me as a leader? What's the impact of that on me and on those around me? What's the cost? Questioning assumptions as well. And creating a space between triggers, my own triggers, and my own response. Breathing, walking, taking time off, sleeping on it, etc. So this is from a leader perspective, right? Thinking about what is in my locus of control, what is not in my locus of control, all of that. Now, when I do that for myself as a leader, then I am actually able to do the same thing with my team. All right. So again, creating that sense of awareness, naming what I see. I think also very important with the team is creating structure. especially when when there's a sense of uncertainty. So creating structure and system within that uncertainty. I might not be able to control the environment, but I can control the rhythm, right? So regular check-ins, clear communication, letting people know, what is happening around. That reduces that sense of anxiety, because brain doesn't just fear bad news, it actually fears unpredictability even more. Honest and consistent communication, not over reassurance, because I've been seeing that over and over again right now. So not withdrawing, but sharing what you know, what you don't know yet, and what you're doing about both. Building trust in a way that is better, that actually builds trust better than any other polished message can ever do. Checking up on people as humans and not as tasks. How are you doing? Not how are you doing with that task, but how are you doing? Asking with genuinity and curiosity as well, not as a form of I have to do it, but something that's really genuine, that's coming from the heart. That simple act of being seen creates emotional stability that ripples through the whole system.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for sharing those. And I really resonate with a lot of that. It is now about 1.5 years ago when the first kind of big waves of attacks on Lebanon by Israel came up around the end of the year. The team put together an article, which I hadn't read before it got published, about what were the things that were helping them manage through the uncertainty. I always go back to it because so many of the examples you just gave us were the ones that the team gave. And I'm always surprised. I read it when it was on our website, and it was a very emotional moment for me, because just what you said, like so many of the team members mentioned our team rituals, which are, our daily stand-up. Once a week, we do something a bit more, human, like we ask each other a question, we answer it together, we do retrospectives, and as you said, like the ability to at least predict how their day was going to unfold from a work perspective, how, that every day at 9 a.m. they knew for sure we'd be together. That was one of the things that really helped them. And I couldn't change anything about the uncertainty of the world, but as a team and as a leader, we could at least create some certainty around our values, around how we spent our time, around our relationships, and how much we cared for one another. So I really resonate with that. And maybe Zeina can share the link to that article for the audience to read. But it was such a touching one, and really a lot of what you said came up for us in response to that question of what had really helped them to deal with the uncertainty during that period.
You know what, Marilyn, just to build on what you said, and it's very, very briefly, is I think sometimes we think as leaders that the answer is so complicated or difficult, or we have to reinvent the wheel, or somebody has to come and help, and it is simple. It's not easy, because it requires consistency, and it requires, again, self-awareness. So self-awareness, right? What is happening within me before thinking of what is happening with others. But it is simple things that we do over and over and over again that truly create the biggest shift for us.
Music to my ears. I spend my time saying this to my clients. I always tell them, I am not going to suggest a solution that is going to sound novel to you. What I will help you do is do it consistently over time. And that is what's going to compound, and is what is going to have the most important effect. And just exactly as it's always that we call them the beautiful basics. If you get the beautiful basics right, that's it. That's really all you need to do. And it's not about some innovative solution, because these problems are also old as the universe. And we've already figured out the answer. We just have to do it consistently. So I really want to, plus 100 on this point that you just made. And a lot of this, of course, it's not just the leader's job. It is also with every member of the system to contribute. But nonetheless, the leader has a bigger role to play than everybody else. And you keep touching on the awareness piece, and I want to spend some time there helping leaders think about that. Earlier in our conversation, you spoke to us about how during times like these, we default to our reactive behaviors, right? Instead of being in our creative. And I wonder if you could explain really quickly how that kind of the universal model of leadership, which speaks of reactive to creative, just how it's structured and how we can notice when we're being in the reactive as leaders and be able to name it for ourselves.
Sure. I'm going to try to be as brief as possible because I can really go on and on and on when I talk about the universal model. You know how close that is to my heart. But if I am to summarize this, and so as leaders, if I want to see whether and be aware whether I am operating from that structure of mind, which is a reactive structure of mind, again, because this is the structure of mind that we fall into the most. And like I said, 70 to 80% of leaders operate majority of the time from that space. And so this is around recognizing that when I am in that space, I am fundamentally driven by fear. All right, by fear and the need of safety. So that's what's driven me in the background. Like I am playing not to lose in this space. So reactive patterns are triggered when that sense of safety, that sense of security, that sense of worth is threatened. And there is that sense of urgency that kicks in, right? And survival starts to kick in. So the internal narrative is always, and it's such a great pointer, even for me, is when you go and you say, I have to, I should, I must, or something bad is going to happen to me, right? So I have to do this, or this person has to like me, or if this work is not perfect, then those, or I must, and something bad is going to happen to me. And what we start to realize in that space is our identity is now attached to something that is completely outside of us. It's attached to the outcome. It's attached to needing to be right. It's attached to needing to be liked. It's attached to needing to be competent, seen as competent. So in the moment, it's no longer about the situation. So it's not about the moment itself or about the situation. It becomes very personal to us. And so if this doesn't go well, what does that say about me? There's a lot of energy being exerted in that space. It feels heavier, it feels tighter. It feels like I'm fighting for something. And the behaviors that would show up would be things around pushing, shutting down, avoiding. I will feel that I'm acting in a way that is not aligned with who I truly am. And we know this, right? Because how many times have we done something and then after a while we go back and we look back at it and think, oh, I wish I handled it differently. Oh, I wish I listened more or I spoke up, right? And that's because we were not really aligned. So it's that sense of urgency, that sense of attachment, that shift in energy, and that narrative that's in our head. Like that is the light bulb moment.
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, we all fall into our reactive in normal times, but also more when we're tired, when we're under stress, when uncertainty and complexity are getting the best of us. And so it's human to fall back into your reactive, but it's leadership to climb out of it. And, one of the reports that you had shared, I remember going to a webinar earlier, maybe about, I don't know, less than a year ago, but you had shared some results about how leaders in this region also have some creative strengths that are stronger, let's say, or more visible in leaders here than anywhere else. And I think one is around kind of the community concern side of things, and the other is around systems thinking. Talk to us a little bit about those findings and about how those strengths can help us through this period.
Yes, I would love that. But can I just say something? Because I realized that answering your question, I only spoke really about the reactive side of things, and I did not talk about the creative. So before we go into there, just really quickly, just to let people know that it's not, I don't just have to operate from that state of mind and that's it. There's no way out of that. Actually, how important it is to come and shift And I think the first thing is that if I want to shift from the state of the reactive states of mind into the creative, where I am more at choice, I first have to understand that I can't think my way out of the reactive. I need to regulate my way out, right? I can't think it, because when our system is in a survival mode, cognition is compromised. We're no longer able to think straight. And so again, a pause, a breath, stepping away from the moment, naming it loud, like, oh, I notice I'm really getting reactive here. Creating that gap is everything. And distancing myself from the story, from the I have to, questioning my assumptions. Is that really true? What's the truth in here? Deliberately expanding my perspective. So, all right, great, that's one perspective. What's another way of looking at it? What would Marilyn say about this? What would X say about this? How would X handle it? I don't have to take that approach, but it allows me to sort of widen my perspective in that thing. And things do not need to be perfect. Actually, contrary to that, they don't have to. It's just about leading from that internal compass rather than from external fear, right? I said before that when we are in a reactive, we are playing not to lose. In a creative, it's a completely different energy. Here, we're actually playing to win. Do you see the difference in both of those approaches and energy? It's very different. So asking those questions, becoming aware, and then choosing to shift. How do I want to show up in this moment? I think that's such an important question. What does this moment actually need from me as a leader? What does it need for my leadership? And again, it's not about I'm here or there. It's never that way. It's about where is my center of gravity. And so, yeah, so I just wanted to answer that first. And your question again was, sorry.
Yeah, it was around the creative strengths that may become a bit more naturally to people in the region, around the community aspect and the systems thinking piece.
Absolutely, yeah. So what we've seen in our report is that what actually comes very natural is our system thinking. Okay, so it is it's our community, of course, our community concern as well, like you have mentioned, and it's our system thinking. And so our focus, our strength as MENA region, as Arabs, is that the focus is on the relationship and the collective responsibility that we hold. Like that's the strength, on how we build trust, on how we build loyalty and connection. And for us in this region, the assumption that we hold is more around that relationships precede results. Okay? And it doesn't mean that I don't achieve results or that results don't matter. Results absolutely matter. And we do achieve them, but we achieve them after we've actually built a strong relationship with people. And that sustains the results. All right. And in moments like now, specifically, this is very critical. People are not just looking for direction. People are also looking for reassurance, for belonging, for a shared understanding, for empathy. And I think also places here in the region, such as practices like Shura and the Majlis reflect this a lot, don't they? Like there's that space for dialogue, for listening, for collective sense making, for collective discussions. And that is system thinking. You know, that is system thinking, that it's not just here, it's not just my immediate system, it's not just me, but what is the impact that this has on the wider system that we belong to. So yeah, we care, the community concern, we care. We're here, but we still care about what's happening in Lebanon or what's happening in Palestine or what's happening in other regions. People become very consumed by that as well. They take certain approaches towards that. So there is that broader system perspective that we hold.
Yeah, absolutely. And I remember when you and I spoke of that, I had mentioned a piece of research that we also really love. In fact, connecting those two together, as you just did. So this comes from Professor Ludmila Praslova, and she actually conducted research to show that people with collectivist roots, so from community-oriented societies, are actually better at systems thinking. And that's also the link that you just made for us. So I think those are strengths that we can really lean in on, because they're also what's needed at the moment. And they can really help us, travel through this moment together. One last question, Ghida, believe it or not, we're almost nearing the end of our time together, but I have one more question that also comes directly from that model, which, we're starting as the period of crisis prolongs and this just becomes our new reality. I'm starting to hear this question a lot from leaders as well, which is, I want to be a good leader, I want to be a good human, I want to be caring, but now we still have to deliver results. And balancing this relationship and task kind of orientations and being able to hold space for both. You opened today's discussion by talking to us about how this complexity is requiring us to hold the tension between a lot of things. And one of them is both caring for people, but also delivering performance to the best of our ability. What's your advice to leaders today on how they can hold space for both of those things?
I think that one can't happen without the other, kind of thing. So today, I don't think they are opposites, but I believe that they complement each other. So relationship and task, a lot of the times, and I think this is an assumption that a lot of leaders hold as well, is that if I am being, if I'm being caring or empathetic, or that means I cannot drive the tasks forward. Or the results, and that's not true. On the contrary, completely. Actually, it is when I build those kind of relationships and I invest in those relationships, I am able to even drive more results. So even statistically, if we want to talk about statistics and want to talk about correlation, all right, and going back to the model, we see that there is a massive correlation, high correlation between the relationship behaviors, competencies, and the task competencies. Okay, so there's a massive correlation, and what that means is that they actually lean on each other. They drive one another. And so today, if I am really leading a task, but from a place of purpose and vision, then really what I'm doing is I'm bringing people along with me on that journey. Because I can't just lead that vision on my own. I can't just lead that purpose on my own, but I'm doing it with others. And in order for me to do that, I need to mentor. I need to build my relationship. I need to collaborate. I need to do all of those things. And when I do mentor and I collaborate and all of that, that opens up the space for me to maybe tap into my strategic thinking, which is task. All right, it frees up my time because now my team is able to take on more load. So you think about it, it becomes so much more sustainable. I know that on the short term, it feels easier, for me to just focus on the tasks. Let me get that done. Let me get that report out. Let me push people so that they can deliver results. And then I'll train them later. I'll do this later. But you know what? Today, it's this complexity. Tomorrow, it's another type of complexity that's going to show up. And after tomorrow, it's going to be even another one. And they're just going to be even more and more and more complex. And then I'm going to come to realize that I cannot do it on my own. And so you need people. And that's why I said relationships precede results, because you need people in order to be able to achieve long-lasting results.
Beautiful. Yes. As always, it is about being able to hold things together at the same time that we think are in opposition to each other, but in fact are not. A couple of years ago, our whole conference was dedicated actually to this topic of leadership polarities, and how in fact the two poles are in interplay and they reinforce each other. And of course we have to, as you said, be able to come from a place of self-regulation so that we may choose our position and our intentionality in how we lead through both of those methods, let's say, or those ways. Thank you so much for that, Ghida. That was really important reminders to leaders that both of these things matter. maybe one last thing to talk about before we go into our lightning round. Do you have any favorite tool or exercise that you give to leaders in terms of helping them to think through these tensions?
You mean tensions when it comes to
the present and the future, the relationship and the task, whatever those two things that may feel like they're pulling them in different directions. Any particular, a practical tool that you like to use with leaders in order to help them process them and find their way?
Look, I think that what really helps is, I use the model and we stand on a circle. You know how that looks like, and probably people on the call, not everybody is aware of the model itself. But the tool is really more around than exploring what are the costs of not doing that. What are the long-term implications of not doing that? For example, of only leading from one space. So really sitting there and exploring what would that look like if you just led from that space 5 years down the line. And so I have them come and think about what would happen. So let's just assume that you continue doing what you're doing right now. You are focusing on a task because you have no time to build a team, etc. Great, wonderful. What would 5 years down the line look like? 1 year down the line look like? This down the line look like? And I think when they start to visualize what happens and what takes place, they come to realize at the end that, oh, I can't continue like that. Like that just cannot happen. That's impossible to happen. And also, if I'm just focusing on the tasks, on a relationship and building my relationships and all, then how are we moving the organization forward? How are we moving that system forward? Who's producing those results? And so today, and even how am I mentoring and developing the team if I am not allowing them to take responsibility and take accountability over those tasks and drive those tasks forward? So I think that in that instance, it's very much around that, a sense of awareness as to the impact of having one and not the other. But also what I also think is in addition to this, if we also talk about the differences in how we show up differently, because that also has a big part in it, right? Sometimes I don't build my relationship with people because I see them as different. And so I think that they're not good enough, or they're not good for this role. And making them realize that within every system, we all hold a specific role, not just an external role, but an internal role. And what that means is this: so an external role, everything that's an executive functioning, that you're taking care of executive function, but an internal role is those roles that take care of the emotions of the system. So for example, the challenger, the caretaker, the peacemaker, the instigator, the disruptor, all of that. And so how can we actually even build relationships with those roles and lean onto them more and not eliminate any of them, because those roles are important for the survival of the system, for the survival of both of those, the relationships and the tasks. And so again, coming into awareness of each of the roles that we are playing, not just on an external front, but also on an internal front as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Beautiful. Thank you. These are all really good ways of exploring that. Believe it or not, we've come to the end of our time together today, but we always like to extract some last few drops of wisdom from our speakers with our lightning round. So we have 4 questions, Ghida, that we ask every single one of our speakers to answer for us so that we can learn from you. If you're ready, I can start with the first one.
Sure, go ahead.
Okay. So the first one is really just for yourself at the moment. What is helping you to stay grounded?
I think what's helping me mostly to stay grounded these days is my evening walks. And I do something called walking meditation. So I prefer actually walking meditation over just sitting meditation. So I do that in the evening at night, late at night where there's nobody around. And yeah, and that just sort of helps me really feel grounded and connect to Mother Earth.
Beautiful. Thank you for that. And at the same time, what is helping you to stay limitless, to continue holding space for possibility and imagination?
You know what? I have a beautiful and wise colleague of mine that is called Rose, and she said to me not long ago, she said, you can't raise your ceiling. Sometimes you can't raise your ceiling, but you can raise your floor. And that really resonated with me. And the meaning of that is that if I can't move forward or fast enough towards my goals because of the situation that I am in, then I need to sort of sit and focus on developing myself, my thinking, my sense of resilience, my capacity. Because when moment opens up, and it will, then I will be ready for that next stage.
Beautiful. Thank you. What is one leadership quality from the Arab world that has really been brought to life in this period that the rest of the world can learn from?
You know what? I was going to say relationship, but I think we spoke a lot about relationship. I think another very beautiful quality is adaptability. Look at all the things that we go through. We're in a region where there's conflicts left, right, and center, where we're faced with transformations. We've been going through transformations, ongoing transformations for the longest time. And we continuously find way to adapt, to reinvent ourselves, and to move forward. So I think that, adaptability is a very important quality that we have.
Thank you for that. Absolutely. And then last question is, based on our conversation, what are the top 3 things that you would advise leaders to do in order to be more ready to lead with the increased degree of complexity that we are faced with? What are 3 things that you would tell them to do right now?
I think I would say stay grounded, self-aware, be clear and honest. So be transparent as much as possible, and strengthen your connection with the people that are around you and with yourself as well.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for that, Ghida. And thank you again for being so generous with your stories and your insights and your experience. We're really very grateful for everything that you shared with us today.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. This was really nice. And it's lovely to have this conversation again in this crucial time. I think this is super important.
Yes, absolutely. And I'm sure that everyone has taken a lot away from it. For those of you who tuned in today or who might be listening to this at a later time, thank you for being here and for your attention and your time and for learning with us. We really appreciate you being a part of it. As always, the session will be available on our YouTube page as a podcast, on our website as an article. And if you want to re-listen to it or send it to someone in your network, please do pass it along. And if you found value in our session, we'd be grateful for your contribution to our research on leading in the Arab world. It's a 4-minute survey that captures how leaders in our region are navigating uncertainty so that others around the world can learn from us. It would mean a lot if you did complete it. We are, of course, continuing these conversations for 2 more weeks. Through both webinars and Leaders Circle. The full schedule is on our website. Today was actually, this session was the closing session of week 1, which was the week of enduring. Next week, we're kicking off a new theme, adapt. And, Ghida beautifully closed us off on adaptability as being, one of our strongest leadership traits. And we will be talking about beyond the first wave of the crisis, how can organizations institutionalize creativity and adaptability? How can they strengthen their relationships with clients and partners? And how can they develop their ability to sense the emerging shifts so that they're better at adapting to them? We're kicking off with a session on Monday, which is the manager mailbag, where me and Tala will be answering real questions submitted by middle managers about how can they lead in the middle of all of this. That's Monday at 11 a.m. UAE time. And if you would like to submit a question, we will put the form in the comments. In addition to all of the webinars that we have next week, we also have a session on Wednesday, April 8th, 9 in the morning. That is a closed roundtable, Chatham House rules. We're not allowed to say who was there or exactly who said what. But we can learn together, and it's all about sensing what's next for professional services. You know, people like me and you, Ghida, even in larger organizations, the professional services industry is definitely one of the sectors that are feeling the impact of what is going on. And so we want to come together with our peers to learn together, to see what each one of us might be seeing in the market and how we're adapting our offering. So again, if you'd like to join us, our team will drop the registration link. Until then, I hope we all have an uneventful weekend and that everybody manages to regulate and ground themselves. And we hope to see you all in our next session. Thank you for being here.